TV land. You still got the whole day ahead of you to get something going. Okay, now, Clint Bridges is a graduate of the University of Tennessee. He comes all the way here from Columbia, Tennessee today to see us and to speak about the mass climbers. They're one of the leading manufacturers of elevating platforms, and he's worked for Scaffold, Easy Scaffold, for 27 years. He's also one of the owners. And he is active with being a member with the Scaffold and Access Industry Association. And he's also has membership in the A92.9 and A92.10 committees, and as well as the International Power Access Federation. He's written several articles in the MCAA, as well as other articles, and has even a little video talking about safety. So I think we put that on one of our invites. So if you haven't seen it yet, please go ahead and take a look at that. You'll see it on the Eventbrite video. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Clint, and he'll lead us into Easy Scaffold, or what's actually a mass climber, but they're a different, unique kind of animal when it comes to scaffolding. Start.
I'll let it play this video for a little while. Part that I'm most proud of, there was 0 incidents and accidents when it came to scaffolding. And that's what we're shooting for, sending everybody going home safe. And so that was a very high profile job, and with a lot of multi-trade, a lot of people working off of it. That's, you know, no matter what the topic was in that project, it was successful to us. My name is Clint Bridges, and there is, I've left my cards back there, but for you guys that are through the webcast or whatever, through the teams, that's my contact information on it as well. That's my cell phone and my email, and there are no bad questions. When we do training, I tell guys, I don't care if you don't know how to put gas in it. There's no bad questions. Somebody put diesel in a Honda engine the other day, so it's no longer a joke. But my OSHA is in the house today too as well, and so I get a lot of safety guys. They'll call up, and they almost kind of get apologetic, or a little bit trying to let down my defenses. You know, kind of tell me that we're not out to get you, kind of thing. And we don't feel that way at all. You guys make us better. You make our job sites better, and we appreciate when you call too, especially if you don't know. One of our mottos is, if you're not 100% sure, don't do. Don't know, don't do. And following up. And so the fact that you guys call us to make sure, you know, keeps us off the front page of the paper and keeps everybody going home safe. So we really appreciate our working relationship, and we appreciate you guys. I get a little derogatory maybe towards certain safety personnel, but it's in a roundabout way. I said, you know, safety guys and the inspectors, they don't know everything. They can't know everything. Nobody can know everything about everything on the job, but what they do know is the important stuff. And if you do that important stuff, you're not only going to keep them off your backs, but you're going to go home safe at the end of the day. And so that working relationship is really important. They ought to take it serious. Rich pulled me aside about 2 minutes before this started and said that this wasn't supposed to be a sales pitch. And I don't know what I'm going to talk about. But, this kind of gives an idea, just kind of shows you how mass climbers go together. The thing that's going to be a little different, I am speaking in April at the, I guess it's a state conference, is that what it is?
Right, the Michigan Safety.
Michigan Safety. And so because of that, I didn't want to talk in this meeting about the same thing I want to talk about there, which is going to be a little bit more about insurance and mitigation and stuff like that. And so what I'm going to kind of direct this one to is the differences between a standard frame, supported frame scaffold and a standard system scaffold, stuff like that, that's supported off the ground, the kind of your traditional type stuff. You guys are probably halfway familiar with that, probably have a lot of education with that, and especially if you have experience, you've seen it. So the got to kind of relate those. There's a lot of similarities. This is a supported scaffold. It is considered by ANSI and by OSHA a supported scaffold. So there are a lot of similarities, but there are also some differences that you need to be made aware of. I'm not going to try and sell easy scaffold to you as much as I'm going to try and sell mass climbers and the benefits of using a mass climber. Maybe one of the big benefits is, and what you guys might have seen here, what do you notice? They basically built it all off the ground, not climbing up in the air. They put all the guardrail on, they put all the wallboards on, they get it all built, not get it nice and safe off the ground, and then it stays that way. So you're working in a fall protected environment. So it's much safer when it comes to that. Not to mention the speed and ease of putting it together and some of the labor savings as well. I keep hitting the wrong button. And so you get an increase in production. There's an article by Bruce Supernant and based on a masonry productivity report by Franklin B. Johnson that shows that maintaining a convenient work level minimizes mason fatigue. And that just makes sense. We're kind of in counterproductive industries. When our work's up here, our stock's down there. And when our stock's up here, our work's down there. I did it the other way around, but anyway. So what a mass climber does, it gets you in the most efficient level or most ergonomic, and it cuts down those workplace injuries. So the other thing it does, though, is it increases productivity. So it goes better. Not only is it better for the worker, it's going to be safer, it's going to be more comfortable. It's also productive. It makes more money for the owner as well. The other thing about it, since you're right on top of your work, you're not sitting around, your quality of your work is up. Again, the 20 to 35%. Scaffold building and tear down is cut by 50 to 80%. I kind of liken this to an airplane, airplanes. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit related again. But when airplane accidents, most of the time when they happen is during takeoff and landing. And that's kind of the same thing with scaffold. Most of the scaffold accidents happen during the install and dismantle. When that scaffold's up there, you're inspecting it, everybody's watching, you got more people working on it, that kind of thing. Tear down, it kind of becomes a free-for-all. And it has less inspection, less care and precautions are being taken. And that's when the accidents more often occur. So cutting that down by 50 to 80% is huge. One of the misperceptions that we get is, or one of the misunderstandings is guys want to know is when you build supported and frame scaffold, and now I'm going to be held to make sure I'm staying up to date with my OSHA and OSHA standards. Well, it's funny. I always say that when I'm doing our safety presentations and we're doing training around the industry, I tell everybody this is for the state you're in. I said, and for the most part, it's across the country, unless you're in Michigan and California. So now that we're in Michigan, things are a little different here. So you guys will have to hold me accountable. So it does not fall under the ANSI code that requires a professional engineering design for heights over 125 feet. Mass climbers are designed to specific heights. They're what I kind of like to call pre-engineered, pre-designed. For example, the EZ is designed for 550 feet tall. However, we must confirm that the foundation can support the load. Must be one of the things that we can confirm. So a lot of times we have to get a professional engineer involved in that point. It becomes job site specific. We look at the loads and we look at what it can support. And sometimes it's just the ground. Sometimes it's just the, we do need to build an additional foundation to it, some concrete foundation like they did here. Does anybody in this room know what size mud sill you're supposed to have on scaffold? Yeah, that's a good answer. No, we don't know until you get out the job. You're supposed to have a mud sill, and that's what it used to be to everybody. The mud sill is the plate that's at the bottom of the screw jack that spreads out the load. And it used to be 2 by 12 by 24 and 18-inch square. So you still get a lot of guys that say, oh, you've got to have this. So it's got to be sized to meet the loads that's coming down for the application and where it's being put. The other thing you want to do is make sure that the structure can support the wall ties. And so they'll have the manufacturer will supply the ratings that it has to go on there. So for you safety guys out there, if you want to find out if you got a competent person, 2 really good questions for them are, can the foundation support the load? They go, yeah, it can support the load. Well, how do you know it can support it? That's the other important question. What work have you done can to ensure that that's going to happen? They do soil sample tests. They know the PSI. They know the compaction of the ground. We know the load coming down on it. And then we're setting it on elevated slabs, roofs, stuff like that. Then we got to look at that. And then what freestanding height? How tall can the scaffold go before it has to be anchored to the structure? If they don't know that, chances are then they're not your trained, competent person. And then at what height do you have to install those wall ties? And then from that point on, how often do the wall ties that tie the scaffold to the structure, how often do they have to be installed? Those are some simple questions that they should be easily answered. They at least know where to go get the answer if they don't know it. But they should know those off the top of their head. Going off of a roof, again, you can't know everything about everything. I've been doing this, like I said, 27 years. I'm as well versed in mass climbers probably just about anyway, and I know quite a bit about scaffold, and I thought I knew it all. And when I found out I didn't know it all, fortunately, I didn't get anybody killed or hurt. And so now, if we have our manual, we do our training. I don't know why I don't have a manual up here, but we say that's the Bible according to easy scaffold. Yeah, there we go. So it's your Western Michigan rep, John Bowman, there, and he's got a manual. So this is the Bible according to easy scaffold. And we tell you, if it's not in there, you just don't do it. I don't care who told you that you I used to get that he said, she said all the time where, your guy told me that I could do this. And I know good and well that my guy never said anything that's stupid. But it was probably more of a misunderstanding. So our thing is, if it's not in here, you get it in writing. I don't care who told it. We have too many conveniences these days. Communication is too easy. We got emails, we have texts. There's no reason, no excuse not to do it. Power lines are electrical lines are one of my big issues. I've been on 2 jobs now where the owner and general contractor told us that the power lines would be de-energized. And fortunately, the utility company was doing their job. One instance, we were working on the scaffold. The utility guy pulls his pickup truck up on the sidewalk and jumps out and starts yelling at everybody to get off that scaffold because they were live lines. And we even had it in writing from the general contractor that they had been de-energized, and they had not. So we get it from the electrical company, from the utility company with the dates. Because a lot of times they don't come out to make sure you guys are finished. And that date they say they're cutting it back on, they cut it back on. So you better make arrangements to make sure that doesn't happen if you're not finished, or make sure you at least you have people working on it. Scary thing about that scaffold is we had a swing arm hoist that swung out right next to those power lines and was swinging back in, picking up material. So it could have been a really bad. So have it in writing. Elevated slabs, again, you guys get a lot of snow load up here. We asked the engineer, so what's the roof going to hold? We always get 100 pounds per square foot, which that's a uniform snow load. We couldn't stand side by side if it could only hold a point load of 100 pounds per square foot. One thing I didn't realize, parking garages are only 60 pounds per square foot is what they're built for. So I would have never thought that. Well, I thought, yeah, I could throw scaffold up there. Point load, I would say the parking garage is probably greater than a roof. So having an educated engineer, having somebody who knows what they're doing, design it, and that the whole we've been doing it this way for 30 years just doesn't work, doesn't apply. Fall protection. Like we talked about earlier, we build it on the ground. Nice thing about it, you build it that way, it ought to stay that way compared to other types of scaffold where you have multiple levels and people are jumping up and down and climbing up and down and taking off guardrail and moving boards, that kind of thing. If you notice with the mass climbers, most of them have pre-manufactured guard panels that have the top rail and the mid rail and the toe boards built right in. You know, people say toe boards aren't required. I'm really having a hard time finding situations where toe boards aren't required. My customers are going to hate me saying that in this kind of environment, but the fact is people are always walking underneath it. Unless you build a fence, that little red tape going around your scaffold, that's not going to keep somebody out from walking underneath it. It might kind of give you a little where you're not negligent, but unless you're building a fence, somebody's gonna be walking underneath that. So I can't, like I said, I have a hard time not finding a place for toe boards. The nice thing, I keep saying that, like I said, I'm selling mass climbers. The nice thing about mass climbers too is it's easy to inspect. It's all one level. We talk about with traditional scaffolds, frame scaffolds, sport scaffold, they have multiple platforms, multiple planked areas, multiple guardrail, multiple people working in those areas. It's very difficult to inspect that and can require a lot of time. Where with a mass climber, usually you just have that one level. So you can see on the ground, walk underneath it before you get on it and inspect it. Like right here with this situation, you can see that there's just not proper board lap. Now, anybody know? Come on, you guys safety. So everybody ought to be able to tell us what's the proper board lap. What's the max and min?
6 and 12.
6 and 12 inches. And what can we do if you can't get that 6-inch minimum? We can clean it. Clean it. Yeah, clean it. The number one way, and people get hurt on scaffold, most often scaffold fine is boards. I get people call me all the time and they'll go, hey, what's the regulation for board? How far from the end can it be split? How many knots can I have in it? The big one is the deflection. They're putting a pallet of brick on there. Well, how far can one deflect? Hey, you're looking at a board that's holding your life and you're wondering whether you should use it or not. If you're scratching your head that much, just go way up to the side and put something else on, make it a mud sill. So making sure that we have good boards on there is takes care of the majority of the accidents. And one way we make sure people are going home safe. Support personal fall protection. Can you hook a lanyard to it? Every scaffold is different, so you want to make sure that it is the design. Guys like to hook the guardrail. They say, hey, that's safety rail. That's what it's there for. Anybody know what's an anchor point for a lanyard personal fall protection is supposed to hold? 5,000 pounds. Too easy in this room. My rule of thumb is if you can't hang a car from it, you shouldn't be hanging from it either. And the other thing too is if it hasn't been engineered or designed, you just don't do it. People don't realize the loads. The one thing we used to do a lot of was string what they call a rat line. I don't know what you call it here, but where you string a cable across the scaffold, anchored it on 2 points. When I first told my engineer about that, his eyes got real big. He goes, you guys are idiots. He goes, you ever look at the back of a picture frame where they run a piano wire? And it says, don't use piano wire on this picture frame. The reason is because when you string a piano wire like that, the load is multiplied by 20. So now I go from a 5,000 pound anchor point to a 100,000 pound anchor point. And then the other thing about rat lines is you got multiple guys hooking to it usually and running up and down. So unless that engineer is, like I said, been doing it that way for 30 years, doesn't matter. Unless it's been engineered and designed, you just don't do it. Everything on the easy, the tower, and I don't have that in the picture here, but the structure, anything structural on the easy has been designed for an anchor point. Now you got to look at the circumstances. One person per anchor point. You have to read the instructions. It's more than just everybody hook up. You got to know the machine specific instructions for that. Falling object protection. One thing about system scaffold and frame scaffold was it's real easy to build falling object protection. You'll have a level above you, a level below you, and that kind of thing. So you don't, that can become less of an issue, and you can also wrap the outside of it. With mast climbers, because they're moving all the time, and they're usually open on top, they're usually one level. You don't have that luxury of having a level above you. So we do have the ability to put a diaper on the scaffold, which is real important in high traffic areas. You're working downtown. This job, I'll show you a picture of it later, but it's the, is anybody in here Latter-day Saints? So this is the, in Salt Lake City. It's the second tallest building in Salt Lake City. And when they first moved there, they built the tabernacle, and they had a rule that, this is the way I understand it, so I'm giving hearsay. So now that I'm on camera, maybe being recorded, I can say, nothing could be, no building could be taller than the tabernacle. Well, it wasn't very long, they found out the tabernacle wasn't that tall. So then they built the church office, and it's at 420 feet. They said no building can be any taller than 420 in the state of Utah. This is 410. It's actually owned by the church, and it's directly across from the, I got a picture of it later, it's more impressive. It's directly across from the tabernacle. So those are some high dollar condos right there looking down on the tabernacle. But we actually had a 2 by 10 by 16 at 300 feet in the air fall off that scaffold. And we are on a postage stamp. High traffic area, downtown Salt Lake, sidewalks all around, and you are just puckered up until that thing hits the ground. So, making sure that you have things secured and making sure you have a diaper on there. And I never realized how nasty bricklayers were until we put that diaper on. There's like a tub that was full of meat. We can also do falling object protection, overhead protection, and so we can build that into it. Anybody been to Nashville and seen Printer's Alley? Printer's Alley used to be the seedy area of town. It's where you didn't want to tell people you were going. Matter of fact, this hotel right here, this building had been used since 1930s, and it used to be a house of ill repute. And the only way they got in there was a dry cleaners up across from the legislature. They had a tunnel that went from the dry cleaner up to the house of ill repute. So that may tell you something about the legislature at that time. But now it's a tourist area, and it's a hot tourist area in a hot tourist town. And so because of that, we had to leave that alley open, not only to deliveries, but to tourists. And so we buttoned that scaffold up very nice and tight. And the funny thing was, I was never out there. Not really funny. It's funny, ironic, not funny, haha. That something did fall off that building and land close to me. Now, I don't think it fell off the scaffold. I actually think people were throwing stuff off the building at me. But I was never so glad to see a scaffold get off a wall as I was that one. So, but we do have the ability to build up a nice, tight, fall protected area, or falling object protected area. Capacity of the machine. So there are different types of machines. Just because it's a mast climber, we'll get into the machine-specific training here in a minute. The machines that are designed for a heavier capacity, like this one's designed for 25,000 pounds. This one is designed for 1,100. Again, we talked about knowing what the foundational hold, knowing how often you got to tie it off, knowing what the freestanding is. Another good question is, what's the capacity of that machine? And if that guy's scratching his head and he doesn't know what it'll hold, or it'll hold a little bit over 20,000 pounds, or it'll hold a lot, those are not good answers. That's how you're going to find out whether your competent person on site has been well trained and knows what he's talking about. So knowing the capacity. And it's not only the total capacity. As you can see, this machine here has a 25,000 pound capacity. It's knowing the location. A lot of times with frame scaffold, you have a uniform capacity because you have the supports that are along the wall at uniform spacing. Where with the mast climber, your support's coming off those masts. So knowing what the load is, where it's located on the platform is important as well. It may not be, obviously I'm not gonna put 25,000 pounds out here. Now in this one, I could put 5,000 pounds on each wing or cantilever deck. It also falls into your distribution, knowing how you have to distribute it as well. With the easy, we say you have to have half on one side of what you have on the other. We try to make it easy on you. We don't try to give these really difficult load charts and stuff like that. We don't want guys up there doing math and counting brick. And I've got 500 brick over here. I got 249. I got to go find another brick. You should be able to look at it and use your head and just say, hey, I got a lot of weight over here. I need to spread it out, or maybe I should set a little bit more over here, or something like that. So it's common sense. A lot of people say, we don't want to have we don't have common sense right now. There's nobody out there. I get that all the time. Oh, well, you might as well get off this job because I don't think it's a common sense thing anymore. I think it's just an apathy, kind of lazy thing anymore. And it may be because of it used to be we didn't have safety guys on site. We were kind of responsible a little bit more for our own safety. So, we took a little bit more, we used our heads a little bit more. Now we got somebody else to blame and somebody else to take the responsibility. So a lot of guys just don't do it. But enough of my politics there. But the other thing about mast climbers, a lot of times they have a different type of deck, a metal deck, a diamond plate deck, stuff like that. So that has a higher pounds per square foot most of the time. They could have a higher pounds per square foot rating than a wood deck. So understanding the mast climbers and machines you're working on, that's going to be different than a wood deck framed scaffold. This really isn't, there's quite a few boards out there, but the other thing we talked about scaffold plank being the #1 way people get hurt on scaffold. And I don't really believe that's the #1 way. We say that all the time. Statistically, that's the #1 way. The #1 way people get hurt on scaffold is that they don't know it's education. And that's why we really appreciate you guys coming out there, making sure the people on there are educated, making sure they know what they're doing, and leaning on us for that. Really, the more educated they are, the more likely that we are not to have scaffold accidents. But statistically, the boards. So we have a lot less boards on this that we have to pay attention to because we have a nice diamond plate deck that's welded down. And we only got to look at a couple of boards. So it makes it a lot easier to inspect and safer as well. One of the questions I get is whether I can load it up, run it up, and transfer material into the job site. It looks like an elevator. It has the same characteristics of an elevator. I run that platform up and down all day long, and so people want to say, hey, so can I load it up with furniture and transition that furniture into the building or building materials, whatever? And it's not allowed to be used. That's what we call a transport platform. Anybody in here seen a transport platform on their job? Transport platform is kind of between a mast climber and a buck hoist. So it's could be set up and operated kind of like a mast climber, but it can be used like a buck hoist for transporting personnel and material. Mast climbers cannot be used like a buck hoist or a transport platform. The only time you can transfer material from a mast climber to the structure that is when you're doing the same work. So for instance, and I'm gonna go back to masonry because that's kind of what I grew up on was brick. If I'm laying brick on this wall and I have a pier or an inset to lay off of on that balcony, I can take the brick from the mast climber, put it on the balcony, and throw a shovel full of mud, and I can transfer the material from that point. What I can't do is take it to the ground, load it up with furniture, refrigerators, run it up, and transfer it into the building. Yes, sir.
I have so much to talk about, but I'm not going to because we're doing a wonderful job.
We have a question and answer at the end, so.
Well, I can hold it till then,
No,
but I'm
go
just
ahead.
wondering why you can't. Well, I mean, it's a great device for lifting up a certain amount of weight.
Well,
Safely.
that's a very good
It
question.
seems like a safe way to
It is
move some material.
transport platforms or a mast climber. That's just a whole lot safer to transfer material. They're designed for it, and that's the thing. You've got to, and that's if you ever get a transport platform on that job, they're relatively new. Probably last 10 or 15 years in the United States. You definitely want to look up that standard. I think it's 9211, Nancy. But anyway, find out what makes the transport platform different. What makes it different than the buck hoist? What makes it different than the mast climber? And they do have things like built-in gates that shut the whole platform down, built-in ramps with the guardrail put into it, access off the back that when that gate's open, it shuts it down. When it hits 10 feet, it has to shut down for 3 seconds before it can continue to go down. So a lot of things that mass climbers don't have that make it a safe form of running it up and down. We can actually convert our mass climber to a transport platform because it does have the same characteristics. But one thing you don't want to get on the job, we'll get this a lot, guys get away with it a lot, is that that they'll just use the mass climbers for doing that. You just don't have that safe transition. You can't depend on somebody else to design that. You want to make sure that that comes from the manufacturer. Access, you go backwards a little bit. We manufacture everything that Easy manufactured, everything that's orange is legal to climb. We do that for a reason because people are going to climb it anyway, so we might as well make it legal to be climbed. It's what they call an integrated scaffold access frame. And so you can see the side of this tower looks like a ladder, and that's the purpose. It's meant for you to climb and use for access. So you want to make sure, is it legal to climb? The other thing you want to make sure, let me get back to my access. Now I'm realizing why I did the power, the animations in that sequence. Remember we talked about the number one way people get hurt on scaffolders boards. Number two is access. How are you getting on and off that scaffold? Having a safe way to get on and out of that scaffold is vital. I probably have more people get hurt climbing on and off scaffold than I have boards. It's really close. So make sure that you have safe access. It's really vital on that job. So if it's legal to climb, then you want to make sure that it's legal to access. And the problem is when you get up into this area, it's legal to climb a tower nice and safe until I get up into here. Then I have all those obstructions in the way and it becomes dangerous to climb around all that to get on the platform. So we have an access platform that you climb the tower, flip open that trap door, step out to there, and you've got another ladder through a trap door that gives you safe access to the platform. Those trap doors are kind of my, I nitpick those, whatever you want to call it. But there is not, that's a huge fine. That's a huge violation if you ask me. There is no good excuse for leaving the trap door open on that access platform or that other platform. Guys will say, well, you know, we were all coming up. I just looked at, if you want to stay there and wait till your buddy gets up there and then open the door for him so that he doesn't have to mess with the trap door, that's fine. But you close it. What happens if he gets halfway up that tower and he, oh yeah, I forgot my lunch. He goes back to the car. I've got an open hole there. So I really hammer that home. That's my pet peeve. That's the word I was looking for. No open trap doors, really hammering that. The minute you walk through it, you keep it closed. Then whether a rest platform is required, what's the WM-ASSP requirement for rest platform? Anybody know? I know it's 35 feet nationally. Is it 35 feet? Yeah, so it's 35 feet in Michigan. Understanding that, EM-385, Navy, military jobs, they're 20 feet. A lot of industrial situations that they go below zero. You've got to have 100% fall protection while you're climbing. So understanding where you're working, again, are you working in California? You're working in Michigan? In my industrial situation, a lot of general contractors have their own regulations. So it's really important to know the regulations of where you're working. Everything I'm telling you is for a nice sunshiny day in America. If we'll get into some of the other instances where weather changes that as well. But whether a rest platform is, so you cannot climb a tower more than 35 feet without having a place to stop and take a rest. If you have an emergency situation, a medical situation. This is the one trap door I will let you keep open because the majority of the time you're climbing right through it. And if you need it, the last thing you want to do is go messing with the trap door. You want easy access to that platform. So I will give you a pass on leaving that trap door. As a matter of fact, I recommend leaving that trap door open. After about 35 feet, that's when people are going to kind of quit climbing a tower. You're going to look for access in and out of the building. And that, when people are saying I'm climbing in and out of the building, that's when you want to know how they're getting in and out of the building, having that safe transition. Mass climber, again, because it's elevating, because it's moving. It isn't like a frame scaffold where I've got that permanent access set up in that situation. Can't always build a stair tower next to it that gives me safe transition from those stairs to the platform. A lot of times we're running down to a balcony, doors left open, we have a key to that, we're getting in and out of that, we're climbing through windows. Make sure you got a safe transition from the scaffold to to get off it for access. Scaffold plan. A lot of GCs and a lot of owners and safety personnel are requiring a scaffold plan now. It's getting extremely detailed. Some of them want to know exactly, where you're pulling your trailer. How are you unloading it? How are you keeping your people safe while you're unloading it? Where are you stationing equipment? Not to mention laying out the scaffold, wall ties, foundation, stuff like that. So scaffold plans are becoming quite prevalent anymore. Because of that, we've kind of got a fill in the blank kind of thing to kind of help them assist them at that. It's not the end all be all for that, but it is it's the system. So a scaffold plan confirms that you got the right equipment for the job. I kind of sound like a scaffold salesman when I say this, but worst things to not have enough scaffold. It's very unproductive if you don't have a place for your guys to work. And so with the having that right equipment, making sure you got the right stuff out there, making sure you got that right equipment for a job can be really counterproductive if you don't have it. So say you bring out a scaffolding that isn't the right scaffold for that situation, you may be able to get the work done, but you're not being as efficient if you brought the right equipment done, much less maybe being a little bit more dangerous because you're using the wrong equipment, just getting by with it. So the scaffold plan helps you ahead of time to confirm that. Any site-specific issues, again, wall ties, what that structure is built out of. Is it steel? Is it concrete? How we're anchoring, how many wall ties we have to have, how often we're tying off. Do we need to have access platforms, stuff like that. And then the foundation as well. What are we putting it on? Again, you want to confirm that. And this kind of comes back to where the competent person, the last person in that checklist is that competent person. We did a job down in New Orleans and they said, oh yeah, you could put that scaffold right there on the city street. And I don't know if you guys know much about New Orleans, but it kind of floats. And you can put it down there on that city street. And so it's fine. It's designed for it. We set it down on there and up from the ground come a bubble and crude. And so we had to go back and pull the scaffold off the wall and design a cribbing plan for, spread it all out with crane pads and all stuff like that. Delayed that project by about 3 days because we didn't have a good plan put together. What was this one? Site specific, getting into that, et cetera. Oh, my et cetera on that. So electrical, shoring requirements. I can't have a hard time reading all this, but the overhead protection, stuff like that, making sure you got that out of the way. You get out there and safety guys don't want overhead protection. You don't have it, you're not working that day. So making sure you understand what you have to have. Any accessories required, extensions, 90 degrees. I don't know if you guys, I'll get in that in a minute, but we can extend out up to 13 feet off the front of this platform anywhere along it, things like that. Making sure you got pilaster brackets built in, stuff like that, the right guardrail as well. So a good safety plan, it not only makes you safer, but it also makes you more efficient and profitable. I get that all the time. Well, I can't afford to hire a guy to clean up. I can't afford to send a guy out there and do a scaffold plan. We can't take that time. I get that. But it's funny how my most successful customers are the ones that do scaffold plans, ones that have nice orderly. So not only we're a scaffold plan, it's one of those best of both worlds kind of things. It makes you safer, but it also makes you more productive and more efficient. Giving you an example, this job right here is downtown Memphis, across from Beale Street, across from the FedEx Forum, not Forum, but the FedEx arena that they have down there. We got out to do that job, and they did, and they were supposed to set scaffold flat against the wall. Going to be an easy scaffold set, no big deal. Well, the iron worker put in all the canopies, and we get that all the time. The iron worker, oh, I won't put them up. You come out there, you put them up. But anyway, these guys did not put a scaffold plan together. So they're calling us up scrambling, saying, hey, we need help. And so we had to devise a plan. We had to bring equipment out there. And 2 days later, we're setting up scaffold. And so we took what was a relatively easy and much safer environment. I don't know if you can look at that, but with all those boards extended out that far, and what you can't see really necessarily is how long those wall ties are, how difficult that is to work with. We took a relatively easy, safe scaffold setup, and it became much more difficult and not as safe to work with because we just didn't plan ahead. Not to mention that we started in a 2 to 3 day hold. Job starting off right off the bat in a hold because we didn't put that scaffold plan together. So. The inspection. You can see how extensive our inspection sheet that we put in the back of our manuals is. So it goes back to, you're required to do a daily inspection on the scaffold you're working on. The way I read it, I almost think you're required to use it every time that you have to come back to it. If you leave a scaffold, you lose control of it. So if you go to lunch, you should come back and re-inspect it. That's the way I look at it, but at least have that daily inspection. Scaffold tags. And I don't know, MIOSHA, they may be required by MIOSHA. I don't think that they are required. That being said, they are a great idea. They're also a great idea for covering your liability. You red tag a scaffold, nobody can get out on it. Somebody gets on it, you did red tag it. If you don't want anybody using. So it's a good thing for you to tell your customers, recommend to your customer to have a good tag out program in place. Certification. There are some great organizations like you guys. Not to mention the Scaffold Association, IPAF, International Power and Access Federation. They have good programs for scaffold and mast climber orientation. They do a great job of it. But the one thing about it is that mast climbers, when it comes to competent persons, installers, and users, operators, we don't call them operators because that is a bad thing. You start calling operators and you start looking at operator cards, but users for running it up and down have to be trained by a factory trained personnel, and they have to be trained machine specific to use it. Thing is, they're all different, so it's great to have a good orientation about the use of mast climbers, and it really does help you to ask the right questions, because if you get an orientation on all the mast climbers, you start understanding the different characteristics, so you know the right questions to ask. But if you're jumping on that machine, you need to know specifically what that machine is designed for. And so you need to have the machine-specific competent person training. So now a little bit for my shameless self-promotion. It's not selling, it's just kind of getting you guys a familiarity with the scaffolding. So you can see the different, mast climbers have a great structure there. A lot of them are really built heavy duty, so you can do a lot of different configurations and make difficult situations safe. The like I talked about before, this is that same job, the West End off Bill Street, and where they had the canopies in the way and we had to reach out over it. But the we can extend out up to 13 feet off the front of that scaffold. So we make those really difficult situations relatively easy. Again, you can see that one right there where they reached out. And the cool thing about this one is, started out tight on here. We went with longer platform extensions. We call them platform extensions. People call them outriggers and that kind of thing. But platform extensions that hold your boards. Then we went with longer platform extensions with brackets that help it to kind of take that diving board effect out of it. And then we actually went into the trusses, and then we went to the trusses and put platform extensions out there that extended past there. So it was actually pretty close to 13 feet on that very end. So it made a kind of a cut up little area and was able to do it. We're also able to turn 90-degree decks with our standard decks, with our standard cantilever decks. So we can extend off the front and off the back for turning an outside corner or an inside corner. Right, in this situation right here, they had all this obstruction in the way. So it would have been very difficult and expensive to build a scaffold around that obstruction. And so we were able to, we can just turn that 90-degree deck, hang that deck on there, we're able to reach out over it. So we did a lot of cut work. People have the kind of connotation with the mast climber is they were great for tall, straight walls. And so, but if things got cut up, or if it's just a short wall, mast climber's not meant for this job. But you can see how when you can reach out off the front like that, when you can turn those 90s, that cut up work becomes much easier to do as well as safe because it's designed to do it. And then you saw in that picture at the beginning, we can set it up, and I could set up a 72-foot platform, 40-foot tall off the truck with a guy on the forklift and me in the ground, and we can have it set up in less than an hour. I can take it down from 40 feet in the air and move it in about an hour and a half. So now I'm doing those cut up jobs. I've got guys that put them on a Kentucky Fried Chicken. They'll send one guy on a Kentucky Fried Chicken, he'll put that scaffold up, stock it up, and have it ready to go. So it just becomes much more productive. We have a monorail for it, where we've lifted as much as 3,000 pounds of pieces of stone with the monorail. I'll show got a better picture of that. That's in Biloxi, Alabama, on the courthouse down there. But the thing about the monorail, when you're setting these size pieces of stone, most time people get crane out there, and you got either you're gonna have multiple cranes, or you're gonna have one crane and one team setting it, and they're doing it one piece at a time. Where with the monorail, we're able to have multiple teams up there setting at the same time. So it really increases the production when you have more people working in different areas and doing it affordably. Yeah, I'll tell you the other thing I like about the monorail too is I'm not flying stuff overhead with it. You see where he's at right now. I'm not going to have stuff flying overhead, so it keeps it a little bit more controlled as well.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
How high can that monorail system be mounted?
Well, as far off the platform,
Yes, sir.
the most we've done is about 10, 11 feet. We are a manufacturer. I forgot to tell you we're an American manufacturer. So we do a lot of custom stuff. We don't charge you, our end user, for the engineering and for the design. The thing we charge for is the labor and what it costs us to build it. And the reason we don't charge for that is because a lot of stuff that was custom product after we put it out there, hey, that's a good idea. It became a standard part. The other reason we don't charge is we want you calling us instead of doing it yourself, instead of having to scratch your head. So we could probably do more than that, but standard, we've gone about 11, 12 feet, something like that, above our work.
Another one for you. The monorail systems, I mean, is that something that can be used on the easy scaffold as well as mast climbers? Is it the same type of system that would work on both, or is the mast climber system has its own monorail system and then the easy scaffold has that own monorail? Are they interchangeable?
Well, the easy scaffold is a mast climber. So we make
yeah.
the mast climber is one of the products easy scaffold.
Gotcha,
So
gotcha.
we have easy scaffold mast climbers, we have easy scaffold crank up.
The monorail system is the same between both of them?
It is
Yeah,
the
gotcha.
same. Now,
Gotcha.
the mast climber does have a higher capacity than the crank up as far as
Right.
what you use in a monorail. And again, the mast climber that Easy makes can hold a different capacity. And some don't make a monorail. Some do make a monorail with different capacities. So understanding the mast climbing, who makes that manufacturer.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good question because we do have winter enclosure. Yes, sir.
While we're on the monorail, so can I lift that piece from the ground up
Yes.
on that monorail and then be able to move it along the scaffold on that monorail to where it's gonna be set?
And most of the time we do it off carts.
Oh, that's an amazing piece of equipment then. Yeah.
Most of the time we do it off cars. We roll a cart, the guy just picks it off the cart. I've had some projects where they wanted to pick it off the ground, most of the time because of the size. It was more difficult if you've got a 14-foot panel to fish that in there where you can pull it off the ground.
So Clint, when you wrote that letter to OSHA for that letter of interpretation, it was based on this particular type of setup with a
Which
monorail?
letter did I write to? I've never written more than one. So do you remember? Oh, that was, we'll get into that one. I know which one you're talking about now. That's for voice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did they call it a crane?
No, that one's not considered a crane. So yeah, that was the letter of interpretation, what you're asking about. And that's a good question. We'll get into that. That's a different feature that we have on this scaffold. Became a big issue, lasted about 10 or 12 years before they finally made a ruling on it. And was a good ruling. and to say. But yeah, so that's our hoist, our personal hoist. So, any more questions about the monorail? So that raised some eyebrows.
You're picking the stone up from the ground with a chainsaw all the way, or you're actually
No,
loading it
yeah.
on the rail?
If you're going off the ground, you're not using it.
Okay, okay, so.
So you're considering.
All right, it's your turn.
Yes.
I mean,
Probably loading.
loading with a,
More often than
either with a tractor or a hoist, and
Right.
then transferring.
Yeah, I've got a real good picture of how we how we do it most of the time. But we do have the ability to raise it from the ground as well. Our winter enclosure, everything I'm telling you for is the general United States on a nice sunshiny day. You start putting winter enclosure on it, monorail, hoist, all kinds of different things on it. You have to know how that affects the scaffold. So if you run into that, but we have a really nice winter enclosure system for it as well. I always say Mother Nature is very wicked. And so we're on job sites, we don't have good irrigation, rain's running every which way, foundation runs out, stuff like that, and wind. I'll get into the wind here in a minute. We also have the ability to enclose below us as well, so we don't have to drape plastic all the way to the ground. A lot of times you've got work below you that you have to keep warm for a certain period of time. Well, if I was only enclosing the work platform, then I can only do so much and I got to stop. So this allows them to keep working and keep their work heated. The other thing we do a lot of times, we'll put the heater down there, so it keeps it off the deck. We work in Minnesota in 20 below temperatures. And guys tell me that they'll quit working after 20 below because they start blowing hydraulic lines and things like that. But they're working at 20 below. And a lot of times you're in there and guys will be in t-shirts because you wouldn't think that little bit of plastic made a big difference. But when you're working, it becomes pretty comfortable. So that goes up with you as well. When you put the heat, we can build a platform down there and put a heater that feeds it.
Is there ever a concern of fire?
Oh, fire is always a concern, yeah. So that's it. That's like any other scaffold when it comes to heating and what you're putting on there and that kind of thing. So that's one of those things that doesn't change between platforms.
Now, do you use a regular propane heater inside of that?
They, to be honest with you, on the heaters, I'd be stepping out of my bounds if I went too much on what type they use. But of course, you've got the ventilation. A lot of times we run ductwork, stuff like that. So, that's always something to take into consideration.
Now, do you guys have deck heaters that attach to the lower portion of the diamond plate to keep the
No.
deck warm?
No, that's on most of it, if you see what they're doing now, a lot of times we'll go ahead and wrap underneath that deck because that diamond plate gets cold.
Yeah.
And you start looking for 2x10s and stuff to stand on. I've got some 40-degree below boots, and I can promise you, they are not 40-degree below boots. They do pretty good to about 0. So yeah, it's I always recommend doing kind of like what these guys did, enclosing fully below and keeping that diamond plate warm, as well as it also keeps your hydraulics warm as well. So the thing about the Honda engine, most of the time we're just starting it up, running it up a foot and turning it off. So ventilation with the Honda engine is not usually a concern. That being said, if you're running it like a platform on here, you can't see that we actually had our hoist on here, but the engine is outside so that we don't have to worry about the exhaust in there. So taking that into consideration is important as well. But here's where you're getting into is the material hoist for we have a 4,000-pound gas over hydraulic material hoist for the scaffold. There was a lot of discussion whether that was going to fall into cranes and derricks. And so the ruling for this one was it did not, because it is more like a gantry crane. It's straight up and straight down. Our argument was is that the crane and derricks don't have people qualified for the mast climbers to understand the mast climbers, to be able to train somebody to use a hoist on the mast climber, and that we are qualified to see how that hoist, and you're not moving it. It's not like a crane that's mobile, not a mobile crane. It's fixed. It's staying in that position all the time. So they allow the mast climbing, and the ruling was to allow the mast climbing industry to be able to do our own training with that and with the scaffold there. So that's what you're running into. And we do have a single mast hoist. The single mast hoist is a swing arm that comes in and out. And so because of that, we did have to deregulate it to 2,000 pounds, so it falls under that crane and derrick, so that you don't, so you can use it. It was like 20, ours was like 2,500, so we had to go down to 2,000 to be able to use it. But with this one, we're able to stay at the 4,000.
You're going up and down. Doesn't it trolley in and
It
out
does
too?
trolley in and out.
It's not a crane.
It's not a- Like I said, they're about 12
Is that,
years.
I mean, that's just the definition.
Yeah,
It can move it horizontally and vertically.
but it doesn't go this way at all.
Yeah, but the,
It's
it's,
frame will.
yeah,
But that's not what the
Yeah,
definition
it's,
says, but I like how they came down that, no, that's
Yeah.
really not a crane. I agree.
and that's what they, and there were about 12 years of discussions for that. It took,
Yeah.
none of those things happen fast. So but so it really, as much of it came back to, mass climbing industry does a really good job of our training, being involved in Nancy and making sure that we're safe and do it. And so they still required to have training. It's just letting mass climbing industry handle that. This is the Martin Luther King building in Biloxi, Mississippi. I've got another building I'm gonna say this about, but if you're ever in Biloxi, Mississippi and a hurricane's gonna hit it, you want to go in this building. Solid CMU all the way to the top with heavy stone on the outside. So they were setting all this stone. If you can see, they've got the monorail all around it and multiple hoists. And so they were bringing the stone up on carts on the hoist, rolling it to where they were working, picking the stone off the cart and putting it on the wall. And they had multiple teams. So it was amazing what it did for production on that job site, being able to put multiple guys on the wall, and well for profit as well, not having to get a bunch of cranes out there is the alternative. And think about cranes, you're stopping, you're moving, that kind of thing. It goes back to, when you see crane accidents, it's that, it's the whole airplane thing, takeoff and landing. The other thing I talk about with crane accidents is, I don't know why you get into it, but I mean with the scaffold accidents and how it relates to airplanes. I saw an inspector one time in an interview, and they asked him, well, what caused this plane accident? And he goes, it wasn't one thing. It was about 4 or 5 things. And he goes, I've never been in investigating a plane accident where there weren't 4 or 5 things that caused it. And I thought that's ironic, because that is exactly how it is with scaffold. I have never seen a scaffold incident or accident or anything where there wasn't 3, 4, 5 things that caused it. And maybe if you would have done that one thing right, it would have prevented those other 2 or 3 things for causing an accident. So my guys will call up all the time and want to cut corners. Hey, can we, at least they ask me, and I'll go, hey, can we cut this corner? We can cut that corner. And I go, why would you knowingly want to cut a corner when there's 2 or 3 things you did wrong that you don't know? So always 100%, as much as you can, do it right. So cover up the things that you did wrong. This is the other building. If you're ever in Las Vegas and it gets hit by a tornado or a hurricane, or more likely Armageddon, this is the building. It's the Smith Center for the Performing Arts in Las Vegas. Again, solid CMU to the top, heavy stone all the way around. We had the monorail set up for laying all that stone. And this is my favorite setup. I think it's our most profitable setup and our safest setup for making a difference in a configuration compared to alternatives. And we set a power unit on this side, we set a power unit on that side, and we'll drop a bridge in between from the front of one to the front of the other. We chain it down, we lock it down so they're all tied in together. I got a nice diamond plate deck all the way around, and it stays very easy to set up, very fast to set up, and it just stays that way all the way up the wall. So it's a great way to set up elevator shafts and stairwells, which I'll show you. But the other thing about this building is we talked about making sure that your elevated slab can support the load. This load coming down there, that had to support 90,000 pounds. So I was all prepared to come out there. We're going to have to get the engineer out there, shore it all up. Engineer Ricker said, no problem. We were able to set 9. Now we cribbed it out a little bit. But that roof was able to support 90,000 pounds. So I'll tell you something about that roof. Wow. You have to get off scaffold, just like regular scaffold, 35-mile-an-hour winds. You can't work off the scaffold. The scaffold is actually designed for 90-mile-an-hour winds. So we're not worried about the scaffold falling over. We're worrying about you falling off the scaffold and what you're working with being blown off the scaffold. So kind of the rule of thumb, you see the guys coming down from the crane, you got to get off that scaffold as well. But it's 35-mile-an-hour winds, and we're probably one of the only people that actually field tested that. We just finished setting up this job that we're stripping the brick off and putting new brick on this building, 220 feet high. And it took a direct, you guys remember when all the tornadoes came through Alabama? There were like 9 or 10 in one night, hit the University of Alabama. Well, this building is in Hanceville, Alabama, and they took a direct hit from it. It was just a category 1, so they figured it's around 100 to 105 miles an hour. But the crane looked like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. They had to get another crane out there to tear it down. One of the buildings down below actually moved 6 inches, but the scaffold was fine. We took it completely down, inspected it, and put it right back up. Now guardrail looked like spaghetti, the boards looked like toothpicks. We had to replace a lot of wall ties, stuff like that. But the scaffold was fine. So we're again, 35 miles an hour. You make sure that scaffold's set up right. You make sure that it's being used right. You keep a solid foundation. You keep those towers plumb. She's not coming down. So that's the wall ties. One thing I didn't get in about wall ties earlier, that is that is what we use as an indicator something's gone wrong. I had an old man tell me one time, if you ever jump on a scaffold and it doesn't move, you better get off it. And everybody like, oh man, that scaffold feels good. It's nice and tight. What it is when it's nice and tight, something's in a bind. And the scaffold's kind of designed to have a little movement and a little flow into it. And so we actually design our wall ties so that they'll bend before they break. They're that one point. If you see a bent wall tie out there, you just don't take it off and put a new one on. You want to find out what caused it to bend. You got it loaded wrong. You got it set up wrong. The ground conditions have changed. Something is causing it. It's like a cross brace on the frame scaffold. Cross braces don't just bend. If you left last night and that cross brace was straight, you came back this morning, that cross brace is bent. You got to find out why. You take it off, put a new one back on. Next time it bends, it could be catastrophic. So find out what caused that wall tie to bend.
Quick question on the wind. So when winds over 35, what's your suggestion on the outrigger planks? Do you remove those,
Securing them.
secure them, tie them off?
Kind of depends on the area you're going in. Right now, most of the areas just require board lap. If you're going up high, you better start securing where you get those winds. If you're in high profile, high traffic areas, stuff like that. And that's why, you inspect those boards every day. Every time you get on that, first thing I do is look and make sure I get a good board lap. So yeah, that's a good question. I do think we're headed that way. I think MIOSHA already has some standards involved as far as securing board lap that are a little bit more strict. Yeah, I know. So,
Really?
Yeah.
You mentioned tow boards. We are way too lax on enforcing that, and that will change. Not because of me, but because of our enforcement folks and who runs that. But yeah, tying boards down or making sure they're cleated. We're a little more lax, I think, in enforcement than we should be, but I wouldn't count on it. That's going to change.
There are two things I think are coming. I think tying down the boards, and then the other thing is the leading edge for bricklayer.
But wouldn't that be great if we would just clamp those boards? I mean, there's quick clamps to do
There are
these
clamps.
things.
Yeah, we make clamps.
Bing,
clamp them
bang.
down, that's,
Done.
yeah, so you can do it. It's out there. It's not that big a deal to get it done. So I think there are a couple of things that are on the cusp of happening sooner or later. But that's always, like I said, that one building where I'll show you that picture in a little bit. So you see how we have the different configurations doing the 90-degree deck. We actually have a 45-degree deck as well. So we have that structure there. We can do a lot that you just can't, or is more difficult to do with other types of scaffolds. So we can take a difficult situation and make it easy. My daughter was thinking about being an architect, and she kicked that around for a little while, but she kind of got out of that. But they are. But I told her, the one thing you got to do is, how's that man gonna get up there and do that work? And I don't know how many jobs I go on that they call me out there. It's actually gotten us a lot of business because it's a difficult situation. But there are a lot of times I get out to a job and I go, man, how did you guys work up there? And the guy goes, I don't know. I told them to do that work and I left. I don't want to know how they did it. And that's the last thing I want to do. So, figured out a way to get a man on the wall and get a brick in his hand. That's and that's what we're good at. So, and that's the other thing too, we don't charge for that kind of advice. We want people calling us up. We don't want people rigging up and figuring stuff out on their own. It works good way. It works good both. They're working more productive. They're working safer. The happier they are with the easy scaffold, the more they're going to buy. They're also going to be safer as well, which is good for us. So it's a good back and forth on that, with that philosophy. Bridging between two units, we can do as much as we've done, as much as a 70-foot bridge is the most we've done so far for like bridging over existing structures and that kind of thing. So again, we can take really difficult situations where they just couldn't put shoring underneath, stuff like that, and got people where they could get their work done up there as well. The Mississippi River, this is the I-40 bridge crossing over Memphis. Yes, that same I-40 bridge that the girder broke on it was shut down for a little. It's just amazing how quick they got that taken care of. But anyway, this is right after the bridge collapsed in Minneapolis, and they started going through and reinforcing the bridges. And they built these cans around there and filled them up with concrete. We actually put the scaffold on the barge, brought it out, and set the scaffold off the barge. Can anybody look at this picture and tell me the problem with it? What's about one of the first 2 or 3 things that you're going to be looking for when you're inspecting a scaffold?
You can't inspect the bases.
There you go. I tried to find something to bring with me for all these questions and answers I get off for the kids, so I apologize for that. But that is, so they built coffer dams, nice concrete foundation, coffer dams, kept the area all dry and everything. And we came out there one day and they had flooded the bases. And the bases were flooded. We go, why'd you guys do that? Well, we didn't have anything else to do one day, so we just took the dams down. And so I was like, well, this is the Mississippi River. There could be a car floating down that river. So after changing the liabilities and indemnities and stuff like that, we were able to continue, and also giving them ways to inspecting the tower, inspecting the wall ties, kind of seeing if we're noticing changes that the base would affect. Yeah, again, that does make for a pretty picture though, with that tower just coming out of the water like that. And you can kind of see how we bridged around there and the work that they were doing off of that as well. Don't get too picky on they have harnesses on. This is the Cherry Creek in outside of Denver, North Carolina. Again, a real high traffic area. 330 feet tall of scaffold. And this is why I go back to inspecting your foundation every day. They had 5 sump pumps that pumped the groundwater out for the life of this building. And they were 50 feet below the ground. Well, one of them wasn't hooked up right. This scaffold had been on the wall 9 months, and specifically this one right here in front of the tower crane. They hadn't really inspected it that day, but fortunately the guy that was operating it had his head about him. And when he jumped out there, he noticed that the towers looked like a serpentine belt. Kind of looked like a snake. And the ground had washed out in front of that scaffold. And there's only 4 legs holding that scaffold up. The front left one, I believe, didn't have anything holding it. The front right one had dropped 2.5 feet. And that platform's 200 feet in the air. And everybody's going to work that one. But again, this goes back to doing everything right. I haven't been working on that. I did go over that, didn't I? I'm sorry about that. So I'll wrap this up pretty quick. This goes back to doing everything right. They did the wall ties right, they did it loaded right. And so we were able just to shore it up, go back, inspect it, replace the wall ties, and kept going. We didn't even have to tear the scaffold down, but more importantly, we didn't have an accident. So buzzing through these, I guess we kind of did the question and answers, which a little bit. But the fallen object, this is that building in Salt Lake City. We had multiple levels. The mason was working on this level. Had his mixer on there, his sands, mixed the mud, and then we had other trades up above them. So of course we had to put falling object protection on there as well, so we could put 2 platforms on one scaffold. And what really surprised me was the capacity. I thought we were going to be handing brick through the window, but what worked out, because we didn't overload the base, what the engineering came back, he could actually have a really good working load on that. And then we had to keep it where both platforms weren't between the same wall ties. So we did have some other precautions to take, but it's a really neat setup. This is the Chrysler building. You guys seen the Men in Black 3? And where they're jumping off that eagle right there and going back in time, that kind of thing. So that's where that eagle is. Chrysler building in Manhattan. And again, having the right scaffold for the right application. We had to bring this scaffold up a freight elevator, roll it down a hallway, through a doorway, and out onto that ledge at 600 feet in the air and build it another 150 feet tall. I wish, I don't know why they do that. I've got a picture of them doing this work back in 1929 with frame scaffold. I don't know why they put those side by side. It's really cool because you couldn't even see that scaffold. And compared to the other one, just covered it all up. And that's the other benefit which owners like about the mass climbers is they are, they're very low profile. So especially if you're doing restoration and stuff, they don't affect a lot of the building. We do have chutes available up to 150 feet tall. So if you need to run material down there and post tension, this job, they tell me when they pour those concrete around that LNG tank, that it'll stop a 747 from if it hits it. I didn't get to see the field test on that one. I would have liked to, but we actually loaded it down. We had about 28,000 pounds on it. So we beefed it up to capacity on that. And we also put the monorail in there so that it would assist them in lifting this heavy piece of material to pull the, or push the cable. We also set concrete forms off of it. Cool thing we're doing now is we're actually ganging concrete forms. I don't know if you guys have seen the form work where they gang them and they lift them with a crane, or sometimes they have the slip forms. So we're actually pull those off the wall, prep them, and raise them with the scaffold and put them back on the wall. Like I said, doing elevator shafts, stairwells, just, I mean, you look at the diamond plate all the way around, that's a great work platform. One right here, we put one unit on this side, one unit on that side. We had 3 bridges. So we're covering 8 walls with 2 machines. And 2-inch shot, we can roll it, I said, like through a 3.0 door, go inside elevator shafts and stairwells and stuff like that when the building's going up. So that's the gist of it. Anybody else got any questions or anything like that? Yes, sir.
Yeah, you said it, like in this particular case, the easy scaffold goes up to 550 feet. What if it's higher than that? How do you access?
Oh, we can go higher than that. It's just rated for 550 max capacity. So sometimes we have to double up on the towers, beef up the lower towers, reduce the capacity so we're not overloading those towers. So yeah, I think the highest mass climbers probably done 1,100 feet, 1,200 feet, something like that.
Then the other question I have is, you mentioned, the operator or the user has to be factory trained. Is that with all of the?
It has to be trained by factory trained personnel.
Right.
So we do train the trainer. So if I train you, then you can train the.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And so would that person have to always be on site? I mean, once you got where the platform needs to be and you could be there all day or whatever, you don't really need that operator or that user to keep going up and down. I mean, it just sits there, right?
They only need them if they're running up and down. That's correct. But everybody on that training, like I said, everybody gets on our scaffold. You guys can't get on my scaffold without having hazard awareness training. So, everybody on the scaffold has the hazard awareness, but that's a good point. A lot of times after we train them, we put a sticker on their hard hat so I can look at that operator and tell if he's the one that should be pushing that button.
Okay. So if that person isn't around, can people still climb up the towers and do their bricklaying?
Yep.
Work? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, so that whole user thing, the user means operator.
Right.
Is what we consider our user training. Is actually somebody that can operate it. So not somebody that's just on it.
So with your winter conditions, what is that gonna do? Cause I mean, once you start getting wind, you start feeling that asphalt swaying pretty good. In my head, it just acts like a sail, so it's gonna create that torsion even more. And the last site I was on, we didn't have winter conditions. However, that torsion constantly from it blowing in the wind was loosening the edge of slab anchors. It's actually loosening the tiebacks. Is there anything like prevention wise besides just, a daily inspection?
Well, when we, obviously, their daily inspection is the wall ties.
Yeah.
And my thing, if I'm loosening those anchors, I'm doing something wrong. I've got it set up wrong. I'm anchoring to a structure that's not supporting that anchor. There's something that needs to be called the manufacturer. So you got to get out there. Because with the winter enclosure, we can only freestand so high before we have to anchor it off. We have to anchor it off more often. There's different precautions that need to be taken you can only go so high above your last anchor point. So, there's no telling what is playing into that, but a properly set up winter enclosed scaffold should not be loosening up a wall tie anchor.
What about snow and ice removal if you're unable to have a winter condition? What's your best method in removing it from, other than shoveling? Because, as soon as you heat that deck up, any residue turns to just sheet ice.
As far as if it's enclosed or.
No, not
No,
enclosed.
not enclosed.
Because the majority of our stuff is gonna be non-enclosed, just, you're gonna constantly have to be loading stuff and.
I mean, that's basically what we've seen kind of, and I don't know if we recommend it, but what our customers do is kind of like a sidewalk. They're salting it down, they're keeping it.
Okay, so the only reason I'm asking this, like I just, like I said, had this battle. So any salt though, like sodium chloride degrades the structural integrity of the steel. Or like magnesium chloride degrades the structural integrity of aluminum. So you would be okay with us using those products on your mass climbers?
Well, that goes back to, we get this with the wash downs with brick. Guys will wash the brick down, and you get that mist, gets all up into the different areas. It's cleaning and servicing that scaffold after you get it off that wall, just like you're running your car through the car wash, and then continue to inspect it. You're in those winter conditions, your scaffold's not gonna last as long, so let's continue to make sure that degradation doesn't continue, but you still have to have a safe work platform to work off. You can't have an ice skating rink up there.
Yeah, and that, so I had called every mass climber company around to try to just get some advice on how to keep it safe. Nobody would give me any. Nobody would say anything about salt or any ice smell. We ended up using a rosebud.
How'd it work?
Terrible.
Yeah.
Because you, like I said, you'd heat the aluminum deck up, just
Yeah, they get water.
melt it off, and then you're trying to squeegee it or push broom it, and any residue would create ice in between the diamond plate, the raised diamond plate. So it's still slick. So we actually, even like on the planks, we bought a waterproof skateboard grip tape and grip taped every single plank
Nice.
just to keep our guys from slipping. Because ocean planks, as soon as they get wet, they start to get not spongy, but very slick.
Yeah.
So to prevent any slip and falls, we just put grip tape everywhere. Oh, yeah, I was nervous about salt.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's sometimes in closing, it's not only just because of the snow and the environment outside, it's having a safe platform to work off of as well.
A lot of times ice on that diamond plate. You bang it, it'll pop up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's kind of a daily routine, and if you're up too high, you don't know what else to do with it. That's where a chute comes in handy. You can dump all your snow and ice right down the chute. No hopper.
Because we would bring them down if we knew we were gonna get anything over 2 inches. We'd bring them all back down, shovel them off onto patios or roofs, had drains, and then we can take them back up. But it was just
Yeah, that's a good
2
point.
years of living that.
Yeah.
That's
2 years, wow. Yeah,
I've been in the
that-
masonry business my whole life. That's why I just quit 3 months ago. I'm in masonry in the winter.
So do you guys have the retractable roof enclosures, so we can, if we were to put up a winter enclosure, you have the retractable roof where it comes back off for loading points?
Can it, as far as like for dropping from crane or for overhead,
Yeah, for
Things like
overhead.
that.
So the majority, like I said, we use our tower crane.
yeah.
So certain manufacturers have that, a retractable roof access.
Yeah, we don't, we've made them before. We don't have a standard product that does that. But yeah, we've designed areas for that.
Anything can be made.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that, part of the maintenance should be to wash down the, platform. But sometimes these platforms are up there for what, you said 9 months? So it might be a while before you can even get to it then, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's part of why we build it so heavy duty and put a good coating on it and that kind of thing as well. And so that's, but that is becoming an issue in the mass climbing industry right now. And probably should be an issue in the scaffold industry, is inspecting the steel structure. And we've got a lot of scaffolds been out there a while now. And so I'm inspecting it, and they've had some accidents where there have been some collapses because most of the time because they were improperly stored and just stored in mud and then thrown right back on the wall. And a lot of that happened after the last recession when people weren't doing work and didn't work putting their equipment on the wall, and then they took it out of mothballs and put it on the wall, and we're having issues with it.
So does the manufacturer put out, for example, how to check for compromised structural components and how to either remove them or put new ones in, or how to rehab them? And
Yeah, rehab them and get them scanned and all that good stuff as well.
Oh, are you guys strictly a combustion engine drive? Do you have any electric?
No, we can convert any of ours from gas to electric. So if you're in a situation where you have to have electric, we have that ability as well. We just finished a dam project and couldn't even have propane down there. They're thinking about it, but that's just a big bomb. All sinks down, so that just made a big bomb. So we had to, everything was electric that was down there.
so with the hydraulics on these things, there's no way of preheating the oil or? Cause it.
We can put tank.
Oh,
meters on it. Yeah, exactly. You can run them before you operate them. So they're actually going up and down, the one with the hydraulics as well. So one of the benefits of enclosing it is it keeps it warm. Well, I appreciate it, guys. And I really appreciate you guys coming out as well.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Clint, so much. You'll be getting a email from our charter. He works in the TC area now. He moved out there for a new job not too long ago, and so he'll be sending you a collection of different kind of gifts you can choose.
Like I said, I appreciate the opportunity. This helps make us better, makes our industry better. So this is, I appreciate you guys doing this. It means as much to us that you come here as me come.
And we do have a recorded version of this, and I know a lot of times people can't make it, and now with technology, we'll make this available for those folks that missed this live event, and they can go ahead and see the recording. Okay, so thank you very much for coming out. Want to thank you guys for showing up here today. And just to let you know, for our next meeting, it's going to be with, the subject matter is going to be DOT. So most people think that I don't need to go to that one. We don't involve ourselves with DOT. If you have a fleet, more than likely, you're gonna have to have probably some kind of DOT requirements, whether it's for a chauffeur's license or what have you, and how to be compliant with FMCSA rulings. And there's also going to be an update as far as the safety management system. People in the industry call it the SMS system, and so there's some updates to that. So you want to stay tuned for that. One of our officers will also be, chapter officers will be speaking to that subject matter. Her name is Brittany DeVries. She's our program director, as well as a gentleman by the name of Matthew Kuniken. And he's spoken with the ABC function a few years back. So that's scheduled for March 22nd on a Tuesday. So that's about a month from now. And that's all I have. Oh, one thing I do want to mention is if you didn't get a chance, we got some handouts in the back there. The Michigan Safety Conference, put in a plug for that. It's on both sides. One day is Tuesday, the other side is Wednesday. And you'll even see Clint's presentation in here. Registration form for your convenience. You can do it online, or you could do it on hard copy here and then mail that in. There is a early bird special, so if you get it in before March 25th, you'll get a discount. And letter of interpretation for the Cranes and Derrick that was briefly mentioned here today. You can take a look at that. And then the last handout I have is the compact fast climbers. 3 pages here that Clint had contributed to, written. Well, he was the author on that one. So have at it over there. If you didn't sign in yet, please go ahead and sign in. And that's it. Any questions? Not. Thanks, guys, and we'll see you next time.